Hi, everyone. So today we have Amita Mehta with us. Amita has more than 25 years working in the corporate arena. She's worked in commercial and investment banking, in HR and executive recruitment, as well as marketing and communications. Amita uses her expertise to help businesses and individuals achieve their goals. Through her consulting work, Amita supports corporate clients in establishing and executing scalable initiatives. As a personalized chief of staff, Amita architects and activates customized career plans. And as a keynote speaker, Amita shares stories from her personal experience as a Ugandan refugee with Indian heritage and an out lesbian in a male dominated industry in her speeches, workshops, and seminars to inspire authentic leadership. To learn more about Amita and what she offers, visit AmitaMadePossible.com. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed talking to Amita today. We went all over the map when it comes to career, how to reinvent yourself, what to think about when you're considering asking for a raise, negotiating your salary, the importance of diversity and inclusion in the workplace, the importance of figuring out what lights you up when it comes to thinking about your career and next steps you want to take. So I hope you get as much out of this episode as I did and that you enjoy. Hi, we are here with Amita Mehta today to talk about career, and I'm really excited about this chat. So, Amita, I feel like I'd love to just dive right in. Right now, we are on the heels of the Great Resignation. I think it's something like 40 million people have left their jobs. I just saw a headline that's all about people who want to work from home are now being told, nope, sorry, that's not going to fly anymore. Can you talk a little bit about the landscape, the good news, the bad news? What are we dealing with right now on the heels of the pandemic as it relates to work?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Megan. And my pronouns are she, her. And I have to say, with the Great Resignation, the good news is organizations are hiring. So great for people that are looking to make a pivot. And also good news for folks that perhaps are being displaced from their jobs by way of restructure. Just know the good news is companies are hiring. I would say there's somewhat more bad news on the corporate front in that organizations really need to think creatively about how to retain their talent, because now people are recognizing, especially women, that remote work is how we want to work, and we're getting more savvy and confident about asking for that. And if we don't get, then we have the confidence to move on to another organization. So I would say somewhat that the tables have somewhat shifted in terms of favor of quality talent out in the workplace. And you can reinvent. And organizations, I would say, Megan, are very hip to hiring individuals that are out of the industry. So people that are looking to make career pivots and redefine themselves, organizations are liking different backgrounds and creativity, because people are just so burnt out right now. So just looking for new and different ways of working and new different and new talent.
I think reinvention is a huge theme. As I work more on Scarlet Society and talk to more women in their 40s and beyond, I feel like we're in this new era of reinvention being possible at any age. I think it also feels a little bit scary when it comes to career to make a total 180 shift in what you've been doing. So, can you talk a little bit about reinventing your career, how scary it can be, but how possible it is? That'd be a great place to start.
Yes, and the time is now, and the clients that I work with are able to make that pivot and reinvent themselves. I think a lot of times people surprise themselves by the possible that they can make a shift, from whether it's their organization that they're in, from the leadership or the culture that they're working in. So working with clients on really making and believing that they can make the shift, I think is eye opening for people, because there's just this fear that, oh my gosh, Amita, I've been at the same organization for several years now. I don't have a network. I haven't interviewed in forever, so I'm very rusty on interviewing. And so these are the tangible things that I'm able to work with individuals on in terms of yeah, how do you navigate building your network, or reinvigorating the network that you had once had, but just sort of let it go stale. So really having people feel confident in terms of equipping them with tools on how to navigate this, whether it's reinvention or a new job pivot. So just really tapping into all the tools and resources I think people sometimes forget that they have.
Mm. If I am someone, if I'm a client of yours and I'm just like, I need a change and I really don't know where to start, like, what are some really practical kind of first steps I can start to take when it comes to getting over that, what feels like a big hurdle, and to start making some of those, taking some of those steps that are needed?
Yeah, I think first for me with the client is meeting you where you are, because it could be an instance where an organization decide to displace you or work you out of a job. It's understanding where you are in the process of the breakup. It is very much like breaking up a relationship. So really just understanding where people's mindset are in terms of, wow, like that didn't feel good, and I gave the organization my all. But then we start talking about, what were you most proud of in the work that you did. So yes, it's the breakup, and you have to go through the mourning process and all the stages of grief, and then also making sure that you're practicing self-care, because you'll look back 6 8 months from now and realize, wow, I just jumped right back into the job market and I didn't take time for myself or my family. So really getting people level set on that in terms of if your role was impacted. But for those clients that are just ready to move on from the relationship or organization or leadership, it's really having an understanding of what lights you up. So really talking about, are you leaving or are you running to something or from something? So really level setting around that, because you may be very happy with the organization, but just not within the leadership construct or the team that you're on. So we could talk about, okay, well, how do we get you networked and positioned to make the move within the organization? But then, quite frankly, there are individuals that just feel that the workplace is just too toxic. They don't believe in the mission's value. I think people are really tied to mission values now, and how what they do really fits what the organization stands for. So I think people are waking up to that, and really helping people understand, okay, well, it sounds like you love the work that you do, or you're really wanting to reinvent yourself, but it's time to move on from that environment. So I think that the first piece is just the level set in terms of understanding where people are in their journey. And then some of the tangible aspects are really, what lights you up, and then how do we want to talk about why you're looking and why you're out networking and cultivating your network. So that's like a good starting point with people. But I think sometimes we forget that we just jump right in and, okay, how do I get the next job, or how do I get out of this? But I think there is a lot of soul searching that goes on with my clients, just to level set.
I love that. And I feel like I hear from a lot of people, they want to feel like they're on purpose. They're living a purpose-driven life, and work obviously is such a huge part of that. And I feel like it sounds like even before you look at your resume or cover letter or things that you might think of that come first, it sounds like, no, wait, like, what's your purpose? What's your mission? What's going to marry up with that? And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how to find companies that marry well with what you stand for. Is it something as simple as like go to LinkedIn? Is it talking to people? Like, how do you find your next dream job?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So yes, you have tools like LinkedIn and Indeed, where you can link in with people, and I definitely think it is a tool to use. I would say that I wasn't active on LinkedIn before I decided to launch my consulting practice, and then I realized people had sent me notes from years ago. So LinkedIn is a great tool. It's more than just a billboard, Megan. It's how you interact with it that gets you noticed. And it is a great tool to research target companies. So you might have 3 to 4 companies on your radar that you can actually do a search and find people that are in positions that you are aspiring to be in, or you may be able to track down talent acquisition leaders that you can link in with, and genuinely be a connector, because it does turn people off if you're just calling to ask for something. So when using tools like that, I think it's important to just be authentic and be genuine about why you're reaching out, in terms of just wanting to understand why you're interested in the organization, or perhaps the role that somebody is playing in the organization, because you'll get a lot of intel around what is the culture like. Because we all have to remember that we're interviewing companies, so we don't have to go into it in a fear or imposter syndrome way, in terms of, are they going to like me, and am I going to be the right fit? But we all have to make sure that we're thinking about it from a perspective like, does it match up with my values? Does the culture fit? So interviewing the organization is very, very critical and important to make sure it matches your purpose as well. But then I would say, alternatively, it's the network. So LinkedIn is a great tool, but do you have your tribe? Do you have your board of directors? Do you have I have about 6 to 12 people that I tap into from my past life. So old basketball coaches, old senior executives or CEOs that I've developed relationships in past roles that I've had with them. So I make sure that I retain these relationships as I move on, and tap people, and making sure that it's men, it's women, it's the LGBTQ community, allies, women. So making sure that I'm tapping into my tribe. So as you're thinking about, like, hey, I'm thinking about this crazy idea. I think I might want to be a flight attendant. And what do you think? And so that you can get some of that truth serum from your board of directors, which is very important. And then the cultivation of your network. You land jobs through 90% of how tapping your network. And quite honestly, 85, I think the research shows 85% of jobs are not posted. So it's going to be through your network in terms of how you land the next role.
Wow. When I was poking around your website, I absolutely love the phrase where you call yourself a personalized chief of staff. And I just thought that was really inspiring, because I think we can all look at ourselves as our own little company, whether we have an LLC or an S Corp ourselves or not. And what you're talking about here too is like, hire someone like you to be your personalized chief of staff, but then make sure you have your board of directors in place. And I wonder, when you put together your board of directors, what were you thinking about? Like, how did you put together those key people who you knew you were going to be able to rely on for the truth serum, or the support, or whatever you need?
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that process.
And it's great to have that, because they're your cheerleaders. So even if even if you think, oh gosh, I'm making the biggest mistake, or I made a mistake, it's great to have people in your corner, to have your tribe is always fantastic. But the way I went about it, for me, Megan, it's just it's been organic. It's something that I've developed relationships with people over time, and some of my board of directors, I tap them for different things. So it's a whole, and I'm going to date myself, Rolodex of people, but people that I've just actively made sure, and like what you and I do, make sure that we're being proactive and reaching out to each other. So it's tapping the people when things are actually fine, and it's just, hey Phil, like, just checking in, how are you, and doing that on an active basis. I make sure that I'm reaching out to my people every 3-4 months, even sooner, just to have that linkage. And then when things start percolating or blowing up, in life and career, I'm able to tap them and say, hey Phil, or Sandy, just wanted to catch up with you, wanted to pick your brain. So then that way it's more authentic. You have a relationship with them, and it takes time. So it's not something where, Megan, I would say, okay, now, all right, client, go out, find 5 people in your network and start, like,
Right.
will you be? But sometimes it does work, especially junior people, when they're just starting out. It's like, yeah, start tapping people to say, will you be my mentor? Will you be my sponsor? And sponsor is different than mentor. Sponsor is somebody who's going to take play an active role in getting you to that next job. So it's important to be clear and ask people to say, hey, will you sponsor me? And that is a whole different ball of wax. But people appreciate when you not only ask them to be your sponsor, but that you're like keeping them in tune with, like, hey, this is what's happening, and thank you for introducing me to this next or to the to person X. They were very helpful. So having people come with you on the journey is sort of what's worked for me in terms of my tribe and my network. So always tap people when you don't need anything.
I think that is such great advice. I'd love to ask you a little about the importance of diversity and inclusion, frankly, because I know that you work with a lot of executives on helping craft a culture and a workforce that mirrors what our country looks like, right? And I feel like in our own personal board of directors that would be ideal, and certainly in our larger organization. So can you talk a little bit as well about that, the importance of it if you're a manager, the importance of asking those questions if you're interviewing, that kind of thing?
I think that's very important when you're evaluating an organization that you want to join, is what is the commitment to global philanthropy and diversity, equity, and inclusion? What is your experience as a leader or as talent within the organization? What does it feel like in terms of the climate? Do you feel like you can bring your whole self to work? And so that's one thing I work with my clients as they're evaluating companies, but then organizations who are ready to really like embrace the business case, because there is a true business case for why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. It's not to be rah rah and yes, you want to have employees that are happy, but it's looking at your policies. Are the policies inclusive? What do benefits look like? And do you have business resource groups where people feel like they have a safe place that they can not only surround themselves with people and be allies for various cultures or heritages. And so I think those aspects are really important as somebody evaluating a company, but as an organization, how do you show up? And so it's not about just checking the box and saying, hey, we have business resource groups, but it's more strategically, how do we holistically make sure that we're, like you said, representing the world in which we live? Because if you don't look like the customers you represent, then it's just you're just not going to be sustainable.
I'd like to ask you about some of the what feel like trickier questions or trickier topics to talk to your boss about, say. Let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, wow, like we are not a diverse company at all. Or, for example, salary. I really want to talk to you about salary negotiation because that can feel really sticky. When it comes to having what feels like a really tricky conversation with your manager, like any advice on that front? What do you tell your clients when they're like, I need to have this conversation, but it feels like climbing a massive mountain?
Yeah. Well, twofold. So if you're on the job hunt, good news is a lot of states are now requiring and mandating organizations to share salary ranges up front for positions. So that's the good news with that aspect. So then you don't feel like you're having to go in and negotiate with yourself when you get the question. So, what are your salary expectations? Well, that's something that you can flip back to organizations to say, what is the value of the position? So I think oftentimes we get a number in our head in terms of like, this is what I think I'm worth, but it's more about what's the value and the budget for the position, and talking about it from an all encompassing question of overall compensation, less about like what the base salary is, but really understanding like what's the overall worth for the position. Then you'll understand like, okay, well, based on my skills and experiences, that seems to fit. So that, I think, that helps create some of the, even like closes the gap on comp disparity between men and women now. So that's the good news on
Mm-hmm.
salary negotiation. We can talk more about that. That's my wheelhouse. I love that. I love negotiating that.
Okay.
But in terms of asking your manager, okay, you have the sweaty palms and you're stressing out. I, I see that as an evolution type conversation. It should be something not poised just during your annual performance reviews, or that you feel like it has to be an event. And timing's everything, right?
Mm.
So that's where I think people get stressed out, because it's oh gosh, I gotta talk to my manager about compensation, but like really understanding like what's the environment? Is the company performing? Is are you performing as an individual? Because it's a deal breaker if you're not performing in your position, and then you're trying to lean into like asking for more money because you think that the person next to you is not working hard enough. So that's
Right.
important, is just sort of understanding the landscape, because if the company's not doing well, you sort of come off tone deaf if you're asking for more money. But
Mm.
what I mean by sort of the evolution of that relationship with your manager, even like with annual performance reviews, I always coach my clients on uh, the first agenda topic when you're one-on-ones with your manager should be about development, seeking guidance on like, hey, I know we just came off of that big project. I feel, based on, and be specific. Like I totally, I contributed XYZ% to the bottom line on this project. And, how do you feel about that, manager? And then you can really have a
Mm.
conversation, an ongoing conversation with your manager to say, hey, like we just came off of that big project. And I have to tell you, like, I do see myself in the next 4 to 6 months playing at that next level because of XYZ. What do you think? And so then you're able to have like a comprehensive
Mm.
conversation with your manager. And you can also say in those discussions is like, so I see myself at the next level, which then goes with uh, wanting to have a conversation down the line about more compensation to be in line with the work that I'm contributing in the next level. And so then that way you're not catching your manager off guard, and it's something that your manager knows that you're invested in terms of not just the money but the contributions that you're making. And then they're not going to be surprised again if they're not engaging with you if you decide to move on to another role with another company.
Mm. So it really sounds like in an ideal world, you wouldn't just wait for your performance review to have a really good conversation with your manager, because then it's first of all, it seems like it's going to take away some of the nerves because you have a good rapport, but also it'll give you so many more opportunities to bring up all the things that might be tricky conversation, salary, things about the organization that you don't like or are
Exactly.
behind, or areas for improvement. Okay.
Yeah,
That's so
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, because I mean, but sometimes, like if you, that's where you'll understand is my leadership, are they tone deaf? Are they listening to me? Then you'll get your answer in terms of, okay,
Mm.
well, I really like what I'm doing, but I'm not sure that my contributions are being valued. And again, that's the whole comprehensive conversation you could have about, hey, I appreciate the hybrid work environment, or I do like getting, because clearly there are some people that really do want to get back to the office and go to the food trucks that companies are like having set up outside, the food trucks, the coffee, the beer, so
Yeah,
there are like appealing ways that organizations are trying to get savvy to get their employees back in.
totally. So right now we're dealing with record level inflation, and everybody could use a little bit more money. So if you were to break it down into 3 steps or whatever, however many steps, to like be like, okay, how do I even go about figuring out what kind of raise to ask for, how to ask for it, like break it down in really simple terms to give our listeners a really clear sense of like, where do I go next if I want to get a raise?
Yeah, again, I think you hit the nail on the head, is understanding your worth in the market. So really, again, expanding your network, talking to your current network to understand what, if I were thinking of this type of role and responsibilities, what would the value be? And that's where I always, and then the number two, don't turn down interviews from headhunters or recruiters. Never turn down those conversations, because
Mm.
that will equip you again to understand what is the environment out there in terms of what companies are paying for your talent. So again, it's the network, interviewing. Don't turn those down, but take on interviews. There was an organization, it was like a year in the making. I had conversation after conversation. I was happy where I was at, but uh, there was a role that lit me up, and the money was right, and the culture was fantastic. So it was hard to not make that move. But simple terms,
Mm.
definitely your network and interviewing out there to understand what your worth is very critical. And then you have the Indeeds, and other tools like that. Take those with a grain of salt, but yeah, it's really the understanding what your worth is.
Do you think it's possible to get a big raise at your current company, or do you have to jump companies to get that big, 10, 20, 30K bump?
I could speak in my own experience. The bumps happened when I made the move, and they were significant. So
That was my experience too. I
right.
feel like a lot of people, yeah, you kind of have to, and it's a shame, but so is that sort of recognized from a lot of the people you work with as well? It's just like you kind of understand you might have to be willing to make a big move if you want a big pay bump.
You have to be open to the move. Again,
Okay.
the negotiating power is amazing, and I don't like to get into the whole. Okay, I got an offer over here, and then putting it back into leadership's face to say, "Ha, can you match me now?" Like to me, that just sort of devalues, like even your own worth to negotiate that, in that way. But sometimes it happens because again, look, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So that's why it's really important to be having conversations not only with your manager but the managers, your manager's manager, like really cultivating relationships beyond beyond just your line of sight, so that people understand that, wow, we don't want to lose Megan. She's great, so we want to make sure that that we retain her. So what's that going to take? So it can happen, but I can say in my experience, my own personal experience and with clients, you make the move, organizations are willing to
Okay.
pay.
I'd love to get a little personal and ask you what the best career advice you ever received was.
Be open. I had in my mind that I was going to be working in the front lines. I was going to. I had my whole career planned out, and literally when I made the move to an organization, um, I was so excited. I knew in my head this is going to be my career track, and it was just straight up. And my job was eliminated like 2 weeks before. Yeah,
Oh
two weeks
gosh.
into the job, because there was a merger, and so I had 8 months, about I think 8 months to a year, to find either another job within the organization or leave. And I'm thinking, I don't even have an identity here. What am I going to do? And the best advice was just be open, Amita, because you have skill sets, transferable skill sets, that you could land within the organization. It may not be where you exactly thought you had planned out, but just be opportunistic. So I became entrepreneurial then. That's how I became opportunistic and jumped on opportunities when people tapped me to do them. So I had a great career from being in the business and then moving into recruitment and HR capacity. So I feel like I was able to build this whole entrepreneurial career within organizations, which set me up to go out on my own. But I think best advice is just be open, because you just never know what opportunity could set you up for the next step. And it's okay not to go straight up. You can go sometimes sideways, lateral, up, over, diagonal. That's okay, because you will set yourself up um, for success, and you'll actually be more happy for it. I can speak to that personally.
Well, yeah, you spent years in big corporations, really big corporations, and then you branched out onto your own. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that process for yourself, because I think a lot of people right now are like, man, I want to create my own thing. And it feels scary, but it also feels empowering and expansive. So, can you talk a little bit about any bumps you hit, any advice you have for going, making a transition from that corporate, very typical 9 to 5 at an office setting to launching your own business?
Oh yeah, and Megan, like I was doing a commute like 5 hours a day and 3 hours a day for, gosh,
Wow.
about 10 years. So, but I loved what I
That's a
did.
grind.
But I loved what I did.
Mm.
So you want to caveat that, but I orchestrated it, and I think like you, Megan, right? The thought of being your own brand on your own is scary, because you don't have like all the resources that a large organization has, right? From the gym memberships to right, to having access to
The
HR.
health
Yes,
benefits.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
Look, I'm head
Yeah.
of maintenance now, so I even take out my parents' trash, so I'm finance, I'm marketing, I'm development, I'm all of those
Yeah.
things, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you live and breathe that. So I think that
Hmm.
it can be daunting for people to feel like, oh my gosh, if how am I going to go out on my own? And yes, your phone does stop ringing for a bit because you're out on your own. So I think that there's a fear factor there in terms of like, oh my gosh, I don't have this major corporate brand behind me anymore, because because I think people define themselves by, I work for this organization. And so like when people like, I think East Coast people especially feel like, hey, like when you get the question like, hey, what do you do? People go straight to, I work for, or I am this.
Hmm.
And it's like, wow. So that whole journey I orchestrated, Megan. So it was a year in the making. And so I really, again, engaged leadership just to say, hey, look, I think there's something here that I want to pursue next. And I did bring a business case to them to say, look, it, and this could be an opportunity for other talent to fit into my role. So let me work myself out of a job, and it'll save you money too, right? And
Yeah.
so I think then leadership was behind me, like, okay, yeah, Amita, like totally makes sense. And I stayed on and made sure of the transition, helped recruit the person that was taking on my role, and helped set them up for success before I moved on. But really the impetus of it was I was giving so many people advice about bet on yourself, and if you're not happy, make a change the dance steps. And then I realized I wasn't taking my own advice, and realized, you know what,
Mm.
it's time for me to bet on myself. And I think that I can make a difference in the world. So I was really focused on my sense of purpose and service, to really helping leaders be better leaders and helping people navigate their careers. So for
Mm.
me, yes, it was daunting, scary. And look, and I did it before the pandemic. It was 2019. So I feel like I've had to like pivot and change my business model many times. But I feel like in a crazy way, I've been well positioned, particularly in this pandemic, to be that job search Sherpa for
Mm.
people and help them reinvent themselves. So I feel like it's like right place, right time to really help people think about what they want to do and be
Mm.
bold.
So you shared a little bit about the best career advice you ever got. And I know this can be very personalized based on what line of work you're in, what you do for a living, but can you share for all of our audience right now what your one piece of advice would be in this moment when it comes to career?
Yeah. Are you happy? Are you happy? Are you
Mm.
really invested in what you're doing, in work and life? Because now work and life, there's no work life balance. Work and life bleed
Mm.
together, right? And
Yeah.
so really the advice is like, are you truly happy? Are you waking up every day feeling lit up about what you're doing, what you're contributing, to your work, to your family, to the world? So really that's where I always like to start with people is run to something that's going to make you
Mm.
excited and light you up. And the thing is, you're never going to make a mistake in your career in particular. You could try something, and look, if it doesn't work out, you're 6 months in, you have ownership, you're empowered to make a shift. Because I think we've all programmed ourselves, or many of us have, that, oh my gosh, I just committed to something, and you think it's a forever thing, and it doesn't have to be. We're not programmed to be in one job anymore. You're going to have
Mm.
different careers, different jobs throughout your lifetime. And the time is now. Just be lit up. Take a chance on yourself. Is My motto is bet on yourself and be okay with your brand.
So cool. I feel really inspired. And I feel like for everybody listening who is like, I want this woman as my job Sherpa, where can we find you? Tell us what how to get in touch and what
Sure.
you do in the world. Yeah.
Yes. So you can find me at amitameta.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm on all the social handles as well. You can find me there. But yeah, I'm really committed to
Thank you
helping
so much for
people
listening to
either
today's
be
show.
more
Your support
authentic
means
leaders
so much to us,
and
and I
leaders
hope
in
you
terms
got
of
some
how do
great
you
value from today's
engage your
episode.
employees, because
If
more
you're
than
looking
ever,
for
especially in
resources
this
from today's
environment that we're
show,
working
or
in,
you'd
how
like to
do I be
join
the
other
best
women
leader that I
just
can
like
be
you,
and have my
looking to
employees be as
explore their
productive as
sexual
they
health and
can,
wellness,
bringing their whole
visit
self
us
to work.
over at
And then alternatively,
scarletsociety.com.
for my clients, my coaching clients, I'll set you up, girl. I'm your coach that will give you tangible advice. I will be your accountability partner. And I love that part about my job, in terms of helping people set up goals. But really, again, even from your resume to your LinkedIn profile, tips and tricks, and really setting up a game plan for what's next. That is always fascinating. And then I just, I am now is starting to open up. I actually do keynote speeches about authentic leadership. I tell my story about being a Ugandan refugee, an Indian out lesbian, and how it has served me well. All these things that I thought made me a misfit, and how it's all served me well in my life and career. So I'm loving what I'm doing right now, and just love that I'm here living a life of service for people.
Fantastic. I feel like the next time we have you on, I want the focus to be on how to use your misfit past to your advantage. I feel like you've got so much to say on that front as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Amita, thank you so much. This was so much fun and packed with such great information that I think is going to help so many people. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. As always, I always love seeing your face and hearing your voice. And again, thanks for you're always a great ally. You always raise women up, and I love your mission too. So thank you.